All right, so welcome everyone to the presentation today. This is part of our summer 2020 Launch Your Career workshop series. And today we're going to be talking about interview strategies in the current virtual climate. And we have with us our guest speaker, Jim Reyes, who has graciously, he's graciously provided his time today to speak to us about this topic. And he's from the CSUSB, he's CSUSB Director of Talent Acquisition, so it's a really great honor to have him here. I am going to be learning a lot about him today as well with you. I'm sure he brings a lot of experience with him to, share with us today. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Jim, to get started. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, you would like to ask anything, please feel free to shoot the question into the chat. And if there's any participation pieces along the way, we can also use a chat to facilitate that. But if you have any questions, just shoot a message into the chat and we will respond to that as soon as we can. So I'll go ahead, Jim, and take it away.
All righty. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jim Reyes, and I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition here at Cal State University, San Bernardino. So I wanted to go over a few things as far as, in my experience, what's the best way to position yourself for success. So with that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself because I think it's relevant to where I'm coming from and how I might be able to help. So my title currently is Director of Talent Acquisition. So basically, that's a fancy way of saying I oversee all the recruiting here for staff and management level positions here at Cal State University. Additionally, I've worked for several types of organizations. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for one of the largest nonprofits in Southern California. And prior to that, I owned my own staffing and recruiting company for almost 11 years. And why that matters to you is basically for about 20 years, I've been training multiple recruiting teams and department managers on how to select the best candidates for hire. So I think it's important for you to hear what the other side is looking at when they're looking at resumes or backgrounds and considering who they're going to bring into interview and who they're going to bring in eventually to offer to. So the purpose of my presentation is to help prevent some of the challenges I incurred. I'm a first generation college graduate as well. While I didn't grow up in California, I came from a very similar background as far as I went to a state school with a very high percentage of first generation students. If you're a first generation student, one of the major challenges is that you don't know what you don't know. You don't have somebody kind of an older brother or parents who maybe graduated from college and can help you avoid a lot of the pitfalls that it comes to not just getting through school, but really, graduating and beyond, because you guys are all coming to school, you guys are working hard, a lot of you are balancing jobs out as well, but it's all in hopes of really getting to that next level. And there's certain ways to maneuver the system so that you're best positioned for success once you graduate. So what I thought I'd do is I'd start off with some common myths. So these are certainly things that I thought of when I was going to school, and mind you, it's been a minute or two or several, but I still see some of the same misconceptions with a lot of first generation students. So the first one is the Career Center is going to find me a job. And that's really not the case. The Career Center is a partner. They're going to help you. They're going to give you best practices. They're going to help maybe with your resume, on some interviewing training. But finding a job is your job. So don't misconstrue those two. You own your career, you own your future, and you need to own the process as far as finding that next job. This is a big one for me, which was I can wait until my last semester or after I graduate to start looking for my first real job. And this really it isn't true. You should be preparing for post graduation at the start of your third year. If if you're just getting started and you're kind of in your senior year or you just graduated, I think it's important for you to kind of realize, okay, I didn't get some things done earlier. Maybe I need to adjust my timeline. But really preparing for your first job after graduation should start, really at the start of, as you're coming out of your summer into your junior year. Another myth is a high GPA guarantees that I'll get hired. Again, something that I think a lot of folks, especially first-gen students, think. And most companies are really seeking somebody who's really very well-rounded. Of course, they prefer good GPA, but they'll take somebody who has a pretty good GPA, but great interpersonal skills, leadership skills, and relevant work experience. So internships or job level within the classification that you're looking to pursue long term. Some additional myths are a high GPA guarantees that I'll get paid more. And again, unfortunately, that's not the case. I've made several offers myself where you have somebody coming out with a 3.0 and somebody coming out with a 3.7, and the offers come out, pretty much identical. So where there is a difference is if you have a slightly lower GPA, but you have that internship or relevant work experience, that's really when your pays, that first real job, you're going to get a better offer. So just know that. Another common myth is that unpaid internships are a waste of time. And this is something that later on in my presentation, I'll speak to a little bit more in depth. But internships of any type are hugely important. Obviously, if you can find a paid internship, grab it, make your money. But if the only thing is that's available is an unpaid internship, you jump on that too, because really what's happening is you're preparing yourself for that first job. You're learning about, really, do I even like this? It's one thing to study about it, but there's another thing to go, can I do this on a day-to-day basis, 40 to 50 hours a week? And sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay, because you'd rather learn that, while you're still in school versus after you've put in 5 years and then you have to transition to another line of work. But they're extremely valuable, but if they're unpaid, consider your payment that you're getting paid in experience, because again, as I mentioned earlier, internships are extremely important to help you position yourself to get that first job. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is, and I want to emphasize this, you will graduate. You've gotten this far, but you need to start positioning yourself for that career much sooner than later. Again, if you're a junior, this has to be a huge priority. If you're already towards the end of your time here at CSUSB, certainly not too late. Just realize, again, there's probably some timeline adjustments that need to happen. So let's talk a little bit about internships and having that meaningful job. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I went to school and I had one job. I had the same job in high school all the way through college. Basically, I was washing dishes. And I paid off all my school, and I thought, I'm going to have a degree. I'm going to show that I was able to pay off college. People are gonna want to hire me. And the degree is not enough. The cold hard facts are that really every job that you're probably going to be applying to, everybody else applying is going to have that same degree or a similar degree. So it's no longer separating you apart. It's going to be that work experience, again, even if it is. And of course, get a job or internship that aligns with your career goals. If if you look, if you want to pursue accounting, look at some of the big four accounting firms, or even some of the second tier firms. Again, this is a great way to get hands-on experience and before you commit to 5, 10, 20 years in that given field, really trying it out. So not only are you, is the company trying you out, you're also learning about the company and whether or not this is. The next thing I would mention is get involved. Getting involved is so important. Finding a job is all about who you know. And within private industry, we get an average of 43 applicants per open position. And that number is probably low compared to where we're at today. And again, this relates to private industry, but 29% of the time that you see a position posted, the hiring manager, the department manager already kind of knows who they're going to hire. It's going to be hired either with somebody who they're going to promote, or it's going to be somebody that was referred into them. So when I say referred, it might be, let's say a junior accountant saying, hey, I've worked with this other person at this other company. They were, really strong. They were, there was a time they turned in great work. Take a look at them. And the boss, knowing this, is going to put a much higher value on somebody that is referred to from somebody you trust than a bunch of people that he doesn't know. So when I say get involved, align yourselves with the movers and shakers. You guys know within the class, within the campus through different organizations, who's at the top of the class or who's leading a lot of the business organization. So join relevant business organizations, business fraternity, clubs, get involved, hold office, and don't just show up. Be involved. Make a difference. But also, what you're doing is you're building your network, because these are individuals that down the line in your career can be people that you can turn to, that can open a door for you, or you can open a door for them. And this is kind of the way of the world. When you look at some other organizations, some other universities, they have a really tight-knit alumni group, and they take care of each other. So you guys take care of each other. Align yourselves with other people who have the same career goals. You guys will probably, if you guys stay in the general Southern California area, will bump into each other over the next 5, 10 years. And it's part of building your professional network, which is the next thing I would say is seek mentors. And this is something I did really poorly. I just, I kind of had my head down. I was in a bubble, and I just grinded my way through school, not looking for anybody to kind of be that big brother who could help guide me along the way. So, the first thing is identify people that could provide guidance. And there's a lot of great people that are right around you, starting with faculty. So faculty know, they graduated the previous class of students. And, good students will stay in contact with their faculty and say, hey, I got a job here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And, after a few years, that person who got that first job, well, now they moved into a junior manager position, or whatever the case is. They can, open that door for you and say, hey, I got this other person. They're also, the same major. Give them a call or go have coffee with them. Another great source of mentors is alumni. Look at individuals who graduated within the same professional category and reach out to them. most people want to help other people that are humble, who are seeking help. And if you go to LinkedIn, look up CSUSB and find people who, again, have that same or similar background, reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking to pursue the same type of career that you are. I'd love to share a cup of coffee with you or have a quick Zoom call and see if I can get your recommendations. Former member of clubs, kind of addressed that in the previous slide as far as building that professional network. And again, the more people you know, the more people that could open a door for you. Lastly, ask for recommendations. Be bold. Don't be too shy to ask for recommendations and say, what do you recommend? Who do you recommend that I speak with? And in a pre-COVID world, I always recommended go out to have a cup of coffee with them. Go, buy them a Starbucks and sit there for 30, 40 minutes and have them tell you what, how their job is, what they love, what they don't love, and get those recommendations. Nowadays, obviously, we need to do it in virtual format, but we still need to ask for those recommendations. And then lastly, what I would say on seeking mentors is you got to follow up with them. So if you have a big interview, if you ask for recommendations and they say, hey, go talk to this person or whatever the case is, follow up with that mentor. The mentor relationship is not transactional. It doesn't happen at one point and then you move on. It's again an ongoing relationship, and oftentimes a working professional will gladly spend the time with you to help you, to make recommendations, to open doors for you, but they still have a full-time job, and whatever they're doing to assist you means that they either have to do that work in the evening or on the weekend. So they are taking time out of their day to assist you. The worst thing you can do is never follow up with them, because you're really kind of closing that door on that mentor relationship.
Jim, if you don't mind, there's a couple questions that came in on the chat. Do you mind if I bring those up for you?
Sure.
The first one that came up a little earlier was someone asking about volunteering. I think you were talking about getting experience.
Yep.
So I think the question might be around is what do you think about volunteering as getting experience as part of that process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And when to me, volunteering and unpaid internship, those are pretty closely related. But obviously, if they're in the same vertical, the same business category, absolutely, it's a wonderful way to build your background, build your resume, build those relationships. So absolutely, yes.
And then the second question here is someone was asking about networking. So they're basically wondering or saying, is networking has a slightly higher chance to get you hired if you're able to get a referral?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, it says, so networking has a slightly higher chance to get you hired if you are able to get a referral.
I would say not slightly, I would say greatly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the last one here, it says, does GPA really matter when applying for a job? How many internships would you recommend would be the best to do before applying for a job or would look good in an application?
So there's a few questions in there. So does GPA really matter? I think mastery of the subject is most important. Okay. So you don't want to be a finance major and, you can't work an Excel sheet or, whatever. So I think mastery is more important. I know that myself, I look at GPA kind of through a different lens, because if you're, kind of a kid who mom and dad are paying for all your school, they're paying for tutors, you're probably going to have a higher GPA. I compare that to a kid who doesn't have those financial resources and is, has a side job doing whatever to make ends meet. Um, they don't have the same resources or time to equally compete. So that, GPA, I think, matters somewhat, but I want to emphasize this. It really only matters your first job, if anything, out of school. Most places I know, they're not asking for GPAs. They're looking for experience. And that's the point that I really have to emphasize. That again, when we're looking at the applications or we're looking at what questions we're going to ask, GPA, it's almost like you got in the game. The ticket into the game is your degree. Okay, what else do you got? And GPA, again, I'm not trying to tell people don't study. Just put your school on cruise control. No, it's a balance. But again, GPA isn't the end all be all. There were some other questions in there. Could you repeat those?
Yeah. For the previous question?
Yeah.
How many internships would you recommend would be best to do before applying for a job or would look good on an application?
I would probably, it kind of depends on where you're at school-wise. I think if you start your junior year, you should probably have two. One your junior year, then one your senior year. And I think as long as they're kind of progressive or in the same vertical, then you're going to be in great shape. So. Yeah, I would say one or two. Again, if you have one that you've had for maybe a year and a half, that's also pretty strong. So, either one of those is fine.
Jim, do you want to continue the presentation and go to the next questions a little bit later, because there's more coming through, but I'm not sure how you want to proceed.
How many more?
There's three. I think three more.
Okay, well, let's take it now, and then after these three, we'll wait till the end.
Okay. Would you recommend freelancing to build up branding? I'm going for computer science, and I was told to get in contact with nonprofits in my community to build websites and applications for them.
Yes. Again, if I would probably say if you could find a paid internship, take that. Obviously that's money in your pocket. But volunteering, freelancing, yes, do that secondarily because that's really going to bolster your experience that you can put on your resume. And when you're being interviewed, you can really speak to, hey, here's what I've done. Here's my portfolio of some of the work I've done. So yes.
What would you recommend for older students?
I think I would need more information as far as what would I recommend for older students. I think the same rules apply. So, if you're going back to school and you've had other careers that weren't aligned, I think that this is a time you have to start realigning everything, as far as not realigning, but aligning everything, as far as getting that job that aligns into your major. So that's important. I think the advantage maybe of being an older student is hopefully you've already built up a little bit of a network. Whether it's people you graduated from high school and now they're a few years further down the road than you are, they might be somebody that you can turn to and say, hey, I'm graduating soon. I'd love to learn more about internship opportunities at your company.
And one last question. How can we participate in internships before we graduate during the pandemic?
Well, what I'd like to say on that is that, like hiring here at CSUSB, we're still hiring. We're still moving forward. People are being onboarded onto the CSUSB work site, but they're doing so virtually. Everybody's working from home. I'm working from home. So there's still internships out there. You'll just be working from home as opposed to going into an office. So the internships have not died because people are staying at home. Organizations still see it as valuable to have interns. And I got to tell you, I didn't mention this earlier, but as a company, as an organization, the huge majority of them look at their internship pool as really a pipeline of great candidates that they can choose from for those entry-level positions. So it's almost like you're auditioning for the job, over, several months. Can the person show up on time? Can, is the person grasping the concepts? So that can still be done virtually. So don't discount that internships are still very valuable, and companies are still utilizing that as kind of they're building their bench. And for them, they look at it like, wow, we get to test people out for so many months, and then we're going to take the top 5 and we're going to hire them or something like that, depending on the scope of the organization. So we'll take additional questions, time permitting, at the end of the presentation. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about LinkedIn as a career tool. So LinkedIn is such an underutilized career tool. It is something that, number one, recruiters use to identify passive job seekers and mid-management and above-level professionals. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, it's time to kind of put on your adult pants, if you will, and get going on that, because I would guess you have an Instagram account, maybe a Facebook account, but LinkedIn is the tool that recruiters use to identify a lot of people. So please take a look at that, and it's also a great way to build a network within your skill set before you need a job. So I'm on several different groups that deal with hiring, that are management level groups for talent acquisition or recruiting. And there I can post questions. There I learn from other individuals as far as what they're doing as far as best practices. When I have a job that's specific to talent acquisition, I'll post there because I know that I'm speaking to a very targeted audience. You're also able to get endorsements from previous managers. So if I'm looking at a resume, oftentimes I flip over to LinkedIn. I see how active they are. And if they have a lot of endorsements from previous managers, that tells me they're a pretty solid citizen, and I need to take a strong look at it. And I mentioned this as far as, there's networking groups that will provide best practices within the job. So, okay, LinkedIn is really a super tool for your job search and your career as a whole. I'm going to try and play this video right now. Excuse me. And
so your LinkedIn profile is probably the same.
If I could ask, can you guys see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play this video. It's about 6 minutes long. I inserted it into the presentation because I think it's super valuable that you guys get up to speed as far as LinkedIn, how to build an impactful, attention-grabbing LinkedIn profile, because that's what, again, recruiters look at. So let me go ahead and play this, and we can move on in a few minutes. So, again, I put that in there because I think it's super important that if you don't already have a LinkedIn presence, that you spend the time to build that up, because it's going to matter now, not just with your first job, but throughout the rest of your career. So the next thing I really want to talk about is customizing your resume. And this is super important. One size does not fit all. So don't go in there, spend the time and think that, okay, I've created my resume. I'm just going to start, emailing it all over town, because it's not specific to the job. Each job is unique, and your resume should be tailored towards each one. So that sounds like some work, and it is a little bit, but it's going to be well worth the effort, because the more you can do to make sure that your resume is tailored for the job, that's going to catch my eye. If you're expecting me to read through your resume and somehow pick out different things that, well, maybe they qualify because of this, maybe they qualify because of that, I have another 43 resumes on average to go through. And the people that took the time to customize their resume to put those skills that I'm looking for kind of front and center, that's going to catch my attention. So I mentioned, does it take some work? It does, but it's not as much as you think. So what I do, and I'll show you an example, is I create a skills box at the top of a resume that matches the requirements, just so that you put out there right away, I have all the things that you're looking for. You don't have to go searching for it. It's right here. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the average recruiter is only going to spend about 15 to 20 seconds on your resume. So they're just going through and they're looking for certain skills, for certain backgrounds. And if they don't see it pretty quickly, again, they're clicking on to the next resume. So what does that mean? It means your job is to make it super obvious that you qualify. So let's take a look at an example resume, and I can kind of point some of those things out to you. So here you can see that I have a sample resume. Keep the email address clean. Every now and then we see something kind of silly in there that isn't in the best light. But here's that skill set box that I was talking to you about. And it highlights, the major things that this job that this person is using the resume for, and directly recruiting. So the job description that this resume was created for spoke about you need to develop recruiting strategy. So what did they put first? Recruiting strategy development. They spoke about managing a team. So their performance management of key performance indicators and service level agreements. The other thing that this job description also spoke about was improving the process. So not somebody who just went in and said, okay, I'm going to do it the same way. They went in there and kind of figured out, does it make sense to continue doing this? And again, you can see right in here, process improvement leader. So this is when I talk about customizing your resume, this is part of it. The other thing is you can see here that under their first job there that they're talking about managing an 8-member team of talent acquisition. So again, all this is developed on purpose by design so that this resume fits the job description. So, really when you're creating your resume for that specific job, you should have job description on one side and you're building your resume really to fit hand in glove so that it's targeting all of those skills that the company is seeking. So the next piece that I wanted to touch on was about the interview. So you've done all the work, you've created the LinkedIn profile, you've had these great internships, and really now's your chance. You get the interview. So one of the things I want to mention is be passionate. Don't be afraid to go out there and say, I love this or that. One of the things that when people ask me about what I do, I say, I'm really passionate about talent acquisition because we get to build the talent levels of the organization each and every hire. That's a huge responsibility. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And I can say it because it's true. But I would also mention that I think when we're dealing with different candidates and one who's just kind of, he's there or he or she's there and they're just responding to questions versus someone who's just, they're leaning forward in the interview. They have that passion, that they have that spark. That's the person I want on my team because I can train them because they're eager. So I know that's part of, who you guys are. And I know that sometimes being in an interview can be intimidating, but you have to work your way through that and you have to be able to convey that level of passion. The other thing I was going to mention, dress conservatively. This seems like such a basic thing, but don't come into an interview, with jeans or a wrinkled shirt or stuff like that. And in today's environment, a lot of interviews are done, remotely through Zoom presentation or format like this. Take the time to look sharp, to adjust your computer, to make sure you have a professional background behind you, that you're not going to be interrupted. All these things matter. And I'll give you kind of a pro tip or a hack that I think has served me well. Is a lot of times there's things that there's 5 or 7 different thoughts that I want to convey during the interview. Now what I'll do is I'll put sticky notes all around my screen so that it's right there. And if they ask me a question, I don't have to look over here to look at my notes or to remember some of the key points I want to bring up. By having those stickies around, it looks, it just much more professional. I think it certainly aids you in just looking like the professional you want to be. Another one that's silly, but be accessible. There's been plenty of times where we find a great candidate, we want to talk to them, and they're not returning our phone calls or our texts, and that drives me crazy. So if you're actively looking for a job, I know that you probably get a lot of emails, through your CSUSB email address. If that's the one you're using, you've got to be on top of your email. If you're using, a Gmail or something else, again, you got to be on top of it because, that recruiter is probably only going to give you 2 or 3 days before they just move on to the next person. So make that something you're aware of. The next thing I want to discuss is, again, you've done all the things. You've done the internships. You've done the resume. You've done the homework to know about the company before you walk into the interview, and now you're sitting there in front of the interviewer. One of the things that I think is really smart to do is to answer behavioral questions using a BAR acronym. So that's BAR. And what that refers to is before, action, and result. So if you're dealing with an organization that's halfway competent, they're going to be asking a lot of behavioral type questions. So they're not going to ask, have you done this? They're going to ask you, tell me about a specific time when you did handle this. Okay? So again, you're going to need to be able to answer that and those type of questions in depth. One of the things that I see is a lot of times individuals, when they're interviewing, they just kind of babble. They're nervous. They don't, they want to sound good, but they just kind of keep on rambling and they're all over the place, which, especially if that position requires good communication skills, that's kind of a strike against you. So by sticking to a BAR acronym, it helps you keep in check. So before, action, result. So what does before stand or speak to? It really speaks to, the question where they're saying, can you tell me about a time when you had to deal with, so this is your storytelling. So in that situation where they say, can you give me a specific time when you had to deal with a underperforming employee? Well, I would answer, well, before I got there, before I was assigned this person, the situation was the person was never on time. They weren't getting along with their colleagues. They were turning in half-hearted work, And the result, the downstream effects of that was other departments were being affected, the employee morale. So again, you're painting this picture of what it was before you got in there. The A speaks to the action. So the action I took was I met with them. I put together a performance plan. I showed them how their work or lack of quality work was affecting others. I cleared up expectations, blah, blah, blah. And then you move on to result. And a lot of people forget the result. So the result of it was this person got in line, they got along better with employees, employee morale improved, our relationship with other departments improved because they were no longer getting work that was either incomplete or late. So also when you're going through result, it really gives you a point where you can stop. You can say, okay, I've answered the question thoroughly. I painted a picture about how the problem was before I took over. I explained the action that I took, and I brought it home by speaking about what was the result of my action. And I touched on this for just a bit, but when you go into the interview, be prepared, review the job description, know what key skills they're looking for, and you can anticipate the questions a fair amount of the time because they're going to ask about those areas and be, have your answers ready to go. So, are there other questions maybe that I could answer at this point?
Nothing has come through as of right now.
Okay. So, there's a few that I've seen in the past that are often asked. Excuse me. So one of them is, tell me about yourself. So I would say, first of all, understand the intent of the question. This is usually one of the first questions asked, and it's an icebreaker. So they're really not, this isn't a hard-hitting, make-or-break type of questions. It's just to get the nerves out so you can start, the formal part of the interview process. So this is something where, have kind of a 20-second speech, and be able to speak to that with confidence. And I think if you do it right, you leave enough room for the person to ask questions or to transition directly into the interview. So if somebody asks me, tell me about yourself, I'd say, well, I'm a talent acquisition leader who is really passionate about the fact that we were able to improve the quality of an organization, one person or one hire at a time. It's been something I've been doing for the past 20 years, and I've been able to do it over multiple types of industries, period. Now, again, the interviewer can say, well, tell me about that. How have you, or he or she might take you in a different direction. But again, understand this is, I don't want to say a throwaway question, but it's not, you're not going to not get hired because you didn't answer this well unless you just say something incredibly, out of line. Why are you interested in leaving your current company? Is a question I always ask. I want to understand if they're attracted to our organization or whether they're just running away from a bad situation that they're in. Again, this is something where if you just hate your job and you're just looking for another place, I don't want to be that next place. I want the person who loves my organization and wants to be there. And has always had us on kind of their target list and who can articulate that. I spoke a little bit in the previous slide about behavioral type questions. So this is something that, again, answering in a bar format, looking at the job description, being able to anticipate some of the areas that they're going to be asking about. You should already have your stories in line with, with what you're going to say. Another question that comes up is, what compensation range do you seek? So just so you know, they cannot ask you, how much do you currently make? Okay, note that that is actually against California law for an employer to ask. So, but they should be asking, what compensation ranges do you see? Here's where you should have done some homework. You can go to salary.com, or you can go to glassdoor.com, which are organizations that will gather data on. Glassdoor does it on the company specific, and salary.com will give you an indication of what that job title pays within that zip code. So you should have a decent idea of what that position should pay. And of course, you want to give a range because you don't want to disqualify yourself because you're looking for top of the range. They might have great benefits or some other, great bonus structure that will get you to the total compensation that you see. So again, you want to answer in a way that that doesn't exclude you from continuing in the interviewing and recruiting process. This next bullet point is really for if you are kind of, you're past the first job, or you're looking to get promoted within your own organization. This is a great question. This is a great strategy in order to raise you above the others. If you come into the interview as an internal or someone who's kind of past that first real job kind of thing, coming in with a 30, 90, 100-day plan as far as what you would do to improve things, that's next level stuff. That's going to get you, that's going to get you in front of the next level. So there's also some other questions in here regarding promotion. I don't know how relevant it is to this specific audience, so I'm going to keep moving on. Another thing, have multiple options. You might have, your dream company might be whoever, but you have to have a lot of dreams, basically, because again, if there's 43 applicants per position, that means that unfortunately, you make an offer to 42 don't get it, and that number isn't meant to lower your spirits, but more to encourage you. Okay, I need to have 43 different places that I'm interviewing or applying to. So, look, Southern California is so large. There's lots of opportunities. Don't get hung up on any one company. Yes, you're going to have a favorite, and yes, you're going to have your dream company, but don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if that doesn't come through, you're really at square one. So I'm going to run through these last two because I think it's important. After you land a job, that's just step one. Your job is to manage your career. Just showing up and being on time and doing good work is not enough. No organization owes your career path. Reach out for additional things, volunteer for more projects, manage your career, see what, ask what you need to do in order to get promoted. Seek additional opportunities inside or outside your company. So, volunteer for opportunities within your company or volunteer for stuff outside of your company. Again, you're building your background, you're building your resume. And lastly, I really want to leave you with the responsibility that you guys are going to graduate. If you guys haven't graduated yet, you will graduate. Get that in your mind, know that in your heart. But you will soon be, you will soon have the responsibility to have that next level, or be that mentor to that next group. So stay involved with the university. Open yourself up to now being the mentor, and really, again, lift that next generation up. So last thing is, Denise or somebody within her, the Career Center will be sharing with you a job search master plan. It's really a great PDF document that helps you narrow your search and really focus on companies. It's really a wonderful resource that that I hope you guys will use. So I think we're just about out of time. If anybody has a quick question or two, I'm available. Otherwise, you guys can reach me at my email address here. I'd love to help.
Yes, Jim, I just uploaded the PowerPoint earlier, and I uploaded the job search master plan right now. And there was one more question that came in. For networking, how often should I keep in contact with someone that is in the same industry and position I want to work in?
I would probably say, it kind of depends on what level of, of connection. But I would probably say a couple, every couple weeks or, once a month at probably the latest. And it could be, nothing more than a quick text to say, hey, I've done this or that, or just want to let you know I followed up with this. Just kind of an update, on your progress. But again, it's an ongoing relationship. And the more you can kind of keep that connection alive, the better you're going to do. Because that individual, like all of us, we're really busy, and it's kind of like, what's in our face today that I have to deal with? And then everything else kind of gets pushed to the back of our mind. So again, quick text every other week, or again, no later than a month, just providing an update, I think that would be sufficient.
So that was the last question that came through. Everyone that's on here today, we have the PowerPoint and the PDF are attached to the event and handshake. And I did put my email in here. If you did want a copy of it, for some reason you didn't get to get it, go ahead and send me an email and I will send it to you. But I did provide also, I don't know if you know this, Jim, but we do have access to Big Interview, the online practice platform that we are, students and staff and faculty can utilize. And it's a really great platform. Even yourself, if you want to check it out, Jim, you can. I put that in the chat there as well. So students can practice interviewing in there. And really get some good feedback on virtual practicing. And you can even send those links to us as career counselors in our office, or even colleagues or advisors to get feedback on your interviewing. This is the one thing I wanted to mention real quick at the end.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's really so many resources out there. I'd love to see that, and provide any feedback, or just participate in that. The other thing I would mention is the video I played a little bit earlier came from LinkedIn Learning. And LinkedIn Learning, as a CSUSB student, you have access to it. That is a gold mine of great resources. If you guys aren't on it, you're really missing out. They have interviewing techniques, they have resume building techniques, they had that one there. But there are so many great things, and not just like job search strategies, but if you wanted to, enhance your Excel skills, or you wanted to learn about diversity and inclusion, there are thousands and thousands of videos that not only can you watch and learn about, but you can get certified, which is another thing that you can do on your resume. So again, LinkedIn Learning, great resource. Don't overlook it.
Do you think you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just take this last one. I have a question in regards to cover letters. I know this webinar doesn't focus on that, but if you could provide your feedback, that would be great. If there is no name to regard the letter to, would it be suggested that you call the district to find out who wrote the cover letter, or who to write the cover letter out to? So there's a couple little questions in there, but.
Yeah, so cover letters can be kind of hit or miss. So as far as looking to find out who the person is, I don't think that really matters. I would say it matters like barely nothing. So I wouldn't necessarily spend too much time on it. I think you just said, "Dear recruiter," or "to whom it may be, to whom it might may concern." I think that's certainly sufficient in this situation. I think the thing that I would say is, I would probably say about 1 out of 3 cover letters I see are bad. And the reason why I say they're bad is either they're full of typos, or B, it looks like they copied it from a different job. So let's just say I have a financial analyst position. They'll tell me, thank you, sir, for whatever. I'm really interested in becoming your accounts payable clerk over at Walmart or whatever. So they get the title wrong, they get the company wrong. So if you're going to use a cover letter, double check it, make sure it's on point. I think cover letter that has like maybe 3 to 5 bullet points of why you fit to the job exactly. And go back to the job description, look at what they're looking for, and pop that right back into your cover letter. That's going to grab attention, but don't let it be a negative by half-heartedly doing one. And
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, everyone. And Jim, your time and your great advice and guidance is, I think, going to be very helpful for all of us. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us.
Absolutely. And if anybody else wants to email me for follow-up questions or anything like that, I'd love to be a resource.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.